Welcome to the Business Greater Than You podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of men and women who have successfully transcended the frazzled solopreneur life and built productive teams with better lifestyle and income.
I'm Nelson Bars, the founder and owner of Utah Independent Mortgage Corp.
And I'm Liz Sears, founder and co-owner of My Utah Agents.
We're excited for you to listen, interact, and grow with us. So please share your comments below and let's get started. Okay, well, let's get started.
All right.
How are you, Liz?
So good. How are you doing, Nelson?
Good. I'm excited. We're going to talk about how big do you want to be?
Yeah, because there's a lot of options that we have to pick between. And I know a lot of our listeners are, some of them are still just single, and some of them have, a team up to 50.
Yeah.
So how do we decide where is that sweet spot for you personally?
I think you and I get sometimes, we talk about our companies, and we tend to focus on where we want to be. I want to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Yep.
But there are a lot of people who are very successful and happy with a team of 3 or a team of 2, and not necessarily even owning a business, but being a team, a production team,
Inside
a sales team,
Yeah.
within a company, right?
Yep.
And so we want to talk about that and talk about the pros and cons between running a team versus running a company, right?
Because there are definitely pros and cons to each one.
And you and I have done both, right? We've both had teams within another company, and now we both have our own companies, and we run a company and a team, right?
Right, because we have our own personal little group inside of our larger company that
Right.
we're growing.
Can you talk a little bit about what's different for you? Why did you make the move, and how has it changed for you since you decided to step up from just a team to a company?
So I'll preface this by saying that sometimes I wake up and I look at my calendar and I look at my schedule and my task list and I think, was this really what I wanted to do? Did I really want to bite off this much to chew? But then there's other days when I wake up and I am so excited, and there's not a right way. I mean, the reasons that have driven me to start a company as opposed to a team inside of a company simply are right for me. And it doesn't mean that it's the right decision for everybody. And so for me, what caused me to want to start a company instead is because I felt like there was a big missing piece inside of the real estate industry. Like we've talked about on previous episodes of just wanting to have the amount of support that's necessary for a new agent to truly be successful if they're willing to show up and do the work. And then also the support that's necessary so that successful agents still have lifestyle, still have quality of life. And to have that all inside of one single structure, plug in, ready to go. Plug and play. That's what I was trying to say. And so that was what really drove me. I had seen a lot of people that were amazing fail out of the business. And all I could think is, how? You guys are so capable and so willing to do what it takes, but there was just that missing piece of support that they needed. The second thing that caused me to want to do this is because I found a partner that was as committed as me, and I didn't have to do it alone. And partnerships are tricky. There's, in fact, we could probably do a whole episode on if you're going to partner up, how to do so successfully. Giving just a quick Cliff's Notes on how we decided to do it is she had already just recently left a failed partnership. She got into it with family. I think I've mentioned that before as well. And so when we did it, decided to consider partnering, we spent 4 months going through all of the different things that would be necessary in order to make sure that we fully knew what we were getting into. We fully knew what to expect. We did a 2-year, I call it a prenup, but basically a way to back out and just take what we brought to the table and split what was left to make sure that it was a good fit for us.
That's smart. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
That's cool.
It was really cool. So we dictated what we each brought to the table, and then if there was anything above and beyond that, it would just be split equally as best as we could. And it was kind of fun. The night that it was hitting its 2-year mark, we were actually doing a couples golf league together for fun, and we were at the restaurant that night. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Shannon, our prenup ends in 2 hours. She's like, we should toast to that. So it was kind of fun to have a whole group of friends there with us for it. And so it was just wanting to have a bigger reach, to have, all of the things that we wanted to put into place impact more than just me and my small team. We wanted to impact more. And it's a different beast to run a company as opposed to a team. How about you? What caused you to?
I think I never really was as motivated when I had someone else's logo on my shirt, right? I didn't know it at the time, but as soon as and the reason I made a move is I wanted to have more control.
You wanted to be independent?
Yeah.
Utah Independent
I wanted
Mortgage?
to be able to really design the process.
Yeah.
And when I was in another company, another guy's office for whatever reason, I couldn't do that, right? It was just following their process. And I think a lot of people in our industry, they shop around to find a good spot to plug in and work. And then when it stops working, they just try to find another place and plug in and work. And they're constantly hunting for this dream of someone else who's designed a great process, and they can just send their clients through that process, right? And I just hadn't found it, and I was eager to create it for myself and be able to hire people and tell them how to work for me, right?
Yep.
So it was a control thing, and also a pricing thing. I wanted to have better rates and fees for my clients. But what I noticed after I did it is that it wasn't even after I did it. As soon as I made the decision and committed to doing it, I got way more creative
Me
and
too.
motivated.
Yeah.
Right? It's like all these ideas, and
You have a hard time sleeping because you're like, I can do this
it's
and this
excitement
and this.
level and just a different commitment level. I think the other reason is I'm not good at politics, office politics, and when you gotta, even if I opened a branch of another mortgage company,
You still have to play in their
you've
field.
still got to get their permission for everything you want to do. You've still got to kind of work your regional managers' relationships. If you want to open a new office, you want to hire somebody, they're going to say, well, do a little more production first and give me 3 months of this, and then you can do that. And I didn't want to do that. I'm not good at pushing against boundaries. I tend to live inside the boundaries, and so it was my way to just
Choose
get rid
your
of the
boundaries.
boundaries and make my own.
Yep.
Right? And I don't regret it. I guess I don't always regret it. Sometimes I do. We're going to talk about that. Right?
Yep.
We're going to go through and we're going to compare really what are the pros and cons and the different things you got to think about when you're trying to decide how big you want to be, right?
Well, and I think we should even compare starting a company alone or starting a company with a partner.
Right.
Because as you were talking about the different boundaries, asking for permission, things like that, Shannon's and my relationship is that we ask for permission on anything that's bigger, but we also give a lot of trust and latitude to the other party. So we're able to still kind of be a check for each other. But at the same time, there's quite a few times, like for this podcast, I'm like, I really want to do this. I think it's going to be good for our company, for brand recognition, for helping people know what we're all about. And she's like, that's more than I've ever paid for a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but it's film and pieces and all this stuff. And she said, okay, I trust you, run with it. So
great. All right. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the differences. First thing I want to just discuss is HR.
yeah,
Okay. So if you have a team
inside of another brokerage.
inside of another organization, right?
Yes.
This could apply to just about any field, right?
Yeah.
One benefit of doing it inside an organization is that you don't really have to do anything about HR. Somebody else does HR, right?
Yep.
Somebody else has already shopped around for benefits and met with the vendors and meets with them once a year and makes the decisions on what to offer.
And stays up to date on how to pay regular pay, overtime, holiday pay.
The laws, right?
Yep.
Somebody else onboards your people for you. They go through the paperwork, the legal process, especially, depending on your industry. In our industry, there's background checks. There's all kinds of different blacklists that have to be checked, right?
Yep.
Licensing issues and bringing them on. Somebody else does all that for you. And when you own your own company, you don't have to do it yourself, but you have to train someone else, hire someone else, or outsource it. Right?
And you have to make sure that they're doing it correctly.
Right.
So when the emails come in from ADP saying, did you know this change in the law? It's your job to make sure that gets communicated to your HR department.
Yeah. I'll give one example. Payroll. Well,
Yeah.
And payroll's part of this HR process,
Yep.
right? So we made a switch in our payroll processor. We were using a national company. We would just log onto their website and submit the stuff, but their website wasn't working and it was frustrating. So my office manager came to me and said, I want to change. So we interviewed some people and we made a choice and we went with somebody. And it was a nightmare, right? Just a total nightmare. We finally had to leave and go with another. We decided to end up doing it in-house with QuickBooks ourselves. But the time and money that I've spent this year on switching from one payroll vendor to another to going in-house, and the CPA who has to sort the mess out and his hourly rate, and keeping us current, and then the notices we get from the IRS that say you didn't pay your payroll taxes in first quarter when really we did, but it was a mess. I think I'm not kidding. I think $5,000 is what I've paid just to clean up, just CPA hourly fees to sort through the mess, right? And that's just stuff you don't have to deal with if you're in an organization. You're just running a team. You don't have to do it, right?
Yeah.
However, I think on the positive side of that is I'm able to do some pretty cool things for my people. Like we do a $1,500 home buying grant for any employee that buys a house.
That's awesome.
And it comes out of the company, right? I get to determine the bonus structure for my teams. I can incentivize how I want to incentivize. I can change it when I want to change it.
Yep.
And I don't need anybody's approval to do it other than the laws and the compliance that I have to keep up on, right? What else? Retention.
Well, actually, let's come back to payroll for just a minute, because it kind of goes hand in hand with that, is the bookkeeping. Like, I did not realize how extensive bookkeeping is, especially for a real estate company, because we have a trust account and you can get significant fines if you are not on point with tracking your money going into the trust account, out of it into the operating account in a timely manner, making sure the checks don't get deposited into the wrong account. And at a drop of a hat, you could have to show your books and prove that you reconciled every single month. And that has been surprisingly more complex than I expected. Especially when we crossed state lines and went into Idaho, and now we have, both of those, and we have to, keep it all straight. That's something you don't have to worry about.
So I had an opportunity. I always get opportunities to join mortgage companies, right? They just recruit, hey, bring your team, be a part of us. And so I talked to them sometimes. This one company I was really interested in, and it seemed great. They would say they would collect $900 for every loan, and then the benefit was, well, we'll take care of all of the accounting, all of the HR, all of the marketing, all these things. But then I added up how much $900 per loan is on a monthly basis. Our office is closing anywhere from 40 to 80 loans a month, right? And I can hire a lot of good people. I can outsource to a lot of good companies. I can work with my
for
CPAs.
40 to 80 grand a month.
For that much money, I can definitely afford it, right?
Yep.
So there's a trade-off, and I think I can do it for a lot less than 40 to 80 grand a month, and I can have more flexibility, right?
Yeah.
But the question I think that you have to ask yourself is, on all of these bullet points we're going to talk about, is, do I want to spend my time and energy on that, or do I want to just do business? Do I just want to sell, right?
And sometimes it's worth it, especially if you don't yet have it built out.
Yeah.
So, because building it from scratch can take a lot of time and a lot of trial and error.
Right.
So making sure that you have the right guidance as you do the process.
Okay, so what else? Let's talk about office space.
Okay.
So let's say you're building your team, you're inside an organization. I think about some of the branches I was in. I had one room.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to hire an assistant, there might be a cubicle in the basement that I could put them in part-time, or they could work from home.
Or they could share your office
or
with
they
you.
could come and be in the same room with me,
I've
right?
done that a few times. That's a little tough at times.
Or I could go and lease my own space. And then I'm starting to open a branch, and it becomes different than running a team, right?
Yep.
So one thing about office space that I had when I do my coaching calls, I get on with other loan officers around the country. And there was a guy, he was so frustrated because he wanted to open a bigger office. He was ready. And he had a couple $100,000 of branch money sitting there on the books. It wasn't his money. He couldn't get it, but it was profit that the branch had earned. And the only way he could get it is to gradually increase his commission split over time and draw that down, right?
Yep.
And yet his company wouldn't let him sign a lease on a new space.
Even though he was sitting on.
Even though he had all that money and he had all this track record, the company, corporate gurus somewhere halfway across the country were telling him it's just not the right time to sign a 5-year lease. And, so no. And he was mad and he wanted to leave, but they had him hostage with that $300,000 in the branch that wasn't technically available to him unless he changed his comp plan and drew it down slowly. So you can get trapped too, right?
Yeah.
Depending on your industry and what you do. But when it comes to office space, I think it really is a political thing. You have to beg, you have to earn it, right? You have to,
Yep.
and I just hate think about it, get your production up a little bit and come back to me in 3 months. And, I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff. So that's one reason why I enjoy having my own company, right?
Yep.
Any thoughts on that? On your side?
Yeah. So here's a few things that are going on with us in our office space. Is we had, when we very first opened, we got a sublease of space in Clearfield, Utah, and it was perfect for us, although we outgrew it within about 6 months.
Yeah.
But then we would just like squeeze in. We had our training room and our front office space, and we would spread out between everywhere to try to get everybody in attendance. Then we opened our second space up in Logan, and then we had enough expansion that we've actually leased just office space down in Lehigh. Well, then we have this new office building that's being built out, and our sublet wouldn't go month to month with us. And so we ended up having to just let that one go. And we were told our new office space would be done in October. And now we've been told it won't be till April or May. And so we've been homeless since, July. And that's been a little bit tough. I think it's really hurt the unification of our team. And so that's a burden and a risk that you have when you're with, you have your own company, is sometimes securing office space in a way that works perfect for your team is a little tougher.
Yeah.
When we were at our previous brokerage, we actually did okay getting office space to have offices right next door. They were pretty flexible with us. So I guess it also depends on which brokerage you're with.
Yeah.
Although I will say that our new space is amazing. It's going to be so cool, and I'm so excited for it. It's going to have like 10 phone booths that people can go in, and it's soundproof. And then it's going to have this big open area if people are working on social media and other stuff. That's just kind of that urban cool office.
Yeah.
Everybody together
Can't wait
hanging
to
out.
see it.
Yeah, me either.
That's awesome.
So, and there's a lot of risk with it too, because our 3 office spaces together total, $7-8 a month. And so that's a significant overhead that you don't have when you're in somebody else's brokerage. Generally, it's not that high.
One of the things about being in a company and being on a team is you can never go below 0.
Right.
Right. And as a business owner,
You
you
can.
can go way below 0, right? You can have negative 50,000 in income on a given month, right? Depending on how big your team is. And there's a trade-off there, right? The upside is bigger. The downside is way bigger when you're on your own. I've had to be careful because in my office, some of the loan officers, they have a team that's bigger than what they have earned at this point, right? And I want to let them do it. But we came up with a comp plan that says, okay, you pay for your team if your production doesn't warrant a team. Right? And then the question came up, okay, so what happens if they have to pay for their team and they don't have production for a few months? Are you going to carry that forward until they do get commissions? And my thought was, no, they're not business owners. They can't go below 0, right? The worst month they can have is 0, and we're not going to drag it on and have it be. Anyway, so I think that's a big one, right? The fixed cost and the risk involved, it's significantly different.
Yeah. So it's kind of the whole fixed versus variable expenses that you have.
Yeah.
So
how about liability? Let's talk about the liability and risk of just being a team leader and building your team within an organization versus having your own company. You guys have probably as much liability as me, maybe more with that trust account, right? Talk about what you take on as liability.
So taking on as liability, I mentioned, just a minute ago about how trust account, they are so insanely picky. If a check gets deposited into the wrong account, you need to be immediately moving it over, tracking why and such, and you cannot commingle funds at all. Other liability too is just you are the one renting the space if somebody trips and falls, and if anything goes awry, you're the one as the broker owner that ultimately is responsible if your agents aren't performing, whereas if you're a team inside of another company that company is basically the umbrella liability for it. So that's kind of the risks with that.
Yeah, and I think you can protect yourself quite a bit from liability, right? That's the whole idea of having a corporation.
Oh, yeah. Let's
Right.
pause on that too. I love using that phrase. Have you noticed? Is making sure as a brokerage that you have the right insurance policies in place. So we have a few different ones that we have the E&O insurance. We have the building and property insurance. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's just those two. How about you with that?
Yeah, we have an E&O policy. We have some bonding based on different states where we operate. I think one of the biggest risks for us is just compliance with the mortgage laws. You know,
And making sure that your people are totally educated and
well, not even
functioning
that, making sure
accordingly.
I understand it as the owner of the company and can train my people. If someone in my office, you know, does some fraud, they take me down with them.
Right.
Right. If there's not evidence that I manage and oversee and train against those type of things, then I can be just as liable and just as I can lose my license super fast. So that's a big risk to me. The liability also in, you know, for example, IRS stuff. I had a business 10 years ago. We got in pretty big trouble with our payroll withholdings and not sending them in. And when we finally went out of business, you know, there was probably like $50,000 of payroll withholdings that we hadn't sent to the IRS.
Oh, really?
Because we were using the money, and you know, they slapped my hand pretty hard, and I ended up.
That was a hard time 10 years ago, though.
Well, and I just wiped out my 401k to pay it and moved on, right? But that's a big risk because they will lien your home. The IRS doesn't play games with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you know, I've heard, I'm trying to think of which book it was, or maybe it was a podcast I was listening to where somebody was saying, you know, the worker versus the business owner. You know, the business owner wouldn't have anything without the worker. You know, if the worker's not there to make the pencils, they're like, yeah, but the business owner invested how much money to buy all the equipment, buy all the supplies, everything like that. If the business goes under, the employee can just walk away, whereas the business owner has all of that financial risk. You know, so risk versus reward can be really huge. So as a business owner, running an entire company rather than a team inside of it, you have bigger risk reward opportunity.
Yeah. And I would say if you're going to run your team inside of an organization, part of your job then is to make sure that the organization is sound when it comes to compliance and the IRS and, you know, so that you can, I used to look at it like when I was within a large company, I wanted to just keep my head down and work and do loans, right? And I said to myself, I'm going to let the higher ups put their head up and look around and figure out where the industry's going and what products they need to be able to offer and what laws are changing. And they will tell me when I need to know, and they will keep me compliant. And I'm just going to keep my head down and do loans, right? And then one day my organization failed me. They didn't provide the products that I needed. They took away some products that I needed that other lenders still had, right? And so it's not always cut and dry, but in that situation, that was one reason why I left. It was like, you know what? If I wasn't here, if I was anywhere else, I would still have this product that was making me a lot of money, and I lost it, right? So yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I just think even if you're within an organization, as long as you can trust the organization, as long as they have the right things, you know, I think you can really drive a lot of business, a lot of volume. You can make just as much money. Most of the guys in my coaching program, so we talk about the core a lot. There's 500 students, okay? I would say 490 of them are employed by another organization. They run a branch of a different mortgage company. There are very few like me who have their own mortgage brokerage because they see the value of just selling. And I think for me, part of the reason why I started my own company is an avoidance tactic, right? It's like give myself less time to just sell, and like let me share in some profits from some other guys to take some burden off of me for just selling. And I think the guys who are really successful, they're not trying to make money off of other people. They're just like, I'm going to build my team, I'm going to grow, and I don't want to own a company. I don't want to make pennies off of other guys. I want to make dollars off my own loans. And grow a team. Right.
And you do make a lot more money from personal production generally, and yet you do have a cap. And so there's only so much that you can do. Even as you leverage, you're still going to have a cap until you hire another rainmaker. And so then it's the question of, can you do that, hiring more rainmakers as a team inside of another company, or does it make more sense to open your own?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the hiring and retention difference between a team and a brokerage. So inside of a team, the hires that you have are generally just like marketers and a personal assistant and maybe some more rainmakers or people to help facilitate. But then when you have hires for a company, on top of that, you have your HR, you have your employees, you have your operations employees, you have receptionist, you have all of those other.
Plus the outsourced people, right? Maybe a bookkeeper,
Yes.
maybe a CPA.
Bookkeeper is huge. In fact, I just realized there was something I had thought of when you were talking before, but I was so engrossed with this, I forgot. Is that when you own your own company, it is absolutely critical to be hyper aware of exactly what your P&L is every single month.
Yeah.
Not just knowing what money is coming in, but knowing if it's allocated according to what is common for the industry. Are you overspending in areas, underspending in areas, so that you're maximizing your impact with the dollars you have coming in.
Yeah.
So Shannon and I do a mini one just inside of our brokerage, looking at our own personal books 3 weeks. And then on the 4th week, we bring in our actual bookkeeper who's putting it all into QuickBooks for us for the accountant. And they're the ones who almost CFO us,
That's
help
cool.
us make sure that we've got
Tell
our
you
numbers
where
right.
you need to make changes. And that's a whole nother meeting in your hour, in your weekly schedule, in your monthly schedule. That's
Yeah,
one
so
more
I guess
thing
that's something I didn't mention in the last episode. Mondays at 1:30.
Yeah.
1:30 to 2.
Yeah, and think about how many meetings I do because I'm running a company, not just a branch or a team, right? And I spent a lot of time this summer. Let's talk about
Let's talk about which meetings have to fit in your schedule as a business owner instead of a team.
Okay. So I have a daily meeting with my office manager every morning for half an hour.
Okay.
We sign checks, we talk about payroll, we talk about who's getting hired and fired and whatever, right? Fortunately, I have an amazing office manager and she really handles most of everything else so that I can do it all in a half hour a day.
Oh, that's the best.
I can answer her questions, but she runs the office very well, right?
Nice.
What other meetings do you have?
So besides my financial meetings on Monday, I have my Empowered Souls meeting, and that's just the name of our company. It's Souls is Shannon Olson, Liz Sears, SOLS, which is where we do our big picture goals. That's where we step back from all the minutia that we get sucked into, and we say, okay, what's the we start off by saying, are we still on the same page? Is there anything between us that we need to work through? Which has been huge because sometimes there'll be just those teeny little things that kill the dinosaur while it's small, and it's so much better to be super in sync. And then we say, what are our big next steps that we want to do? And some of them will say, okay, that's a big next step we're not going to tackle yet, but we want to keep it on our radar. And sometimes it's like, okay, this is the one that we're deep in. Let's take it to the next level. And then I have my operations manager. So I meet with the operations side, Shannon meets with the sales side. And so we each have our meeting. And then those people in charge of that educate everybody else on what happened in the meeting. So it's not Shannon's responsibility to tell me what's going on in the sales meeting. It's the sales manager.
Okay.
And it's not my burden to tell Shannon what's going on in operations. It's our operations director. So those two meetings, we have an expansion meeting every week. So we already have an expansion team up into Idaho, and we're looking at adding 4 more states within the next couple years. So the people that will run the expansion branches and brokerages, we meet with them once a week for half an hour. And
the thing is, like, these meetings sound enjoyable.
They are really
it's not
fun,
that they're
creative.
just a burden.
Yeah.
If you like that kind of stuff, if you want to, you get to interact with a lot of different people and drive different goals than you would if you just didn't have your own company, right?
Yeah, because there'd be no reason to do that stuff. You're just ducking your head and working. So it allows for a lot more creation, I think.
So for me, the meetings, I was just thinking about, most of my meetings I think would still happen, but I would do them with my little team instead of the whole company, right? So we would do, we do it like a monthly thing where we review numbers. We do call coaching. We do, team training once a week, and we do it with everyone. I'm trying to train everyone, but I think it would be different if I was doing call coaching with my assistant instead of a loan officer,
Right.
I would listen to her calls. And those are things I don't even do right now because I'm just booked up and I'm trying to run the company.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so let's talk about marketing.
Okay.
So when it comes to marketing, how is it different when you're within a team compared to if you own your own company?
Within a team, so I guess it depends on what all marketing you're doing. Because honestly, when we were a team inside of a different brokerage, we did have quite a bit of the same marketing because we market our listings the
Did they
same.
provide for you things like material, graphic design?
They did, but it didn't quite match the
Content.
branding of our team that we wanted, and so we tended to create a lot of our own. I'm trying to think of what's different now about the marketing that we do is we're trying to do it on a bigger scale to recruit and grow our business. So marketing our properties is pretty much the same, other than now we're using those a little bit to help attract agents, but then we're doing a ton of agent attraction marketing.
You know, I'm thinking about like, let's say you're an insurance agent and you could either work for State Farm or you could have your own independent thing, right?
Yep.
If you work for State Farm, you're not really dealing with a lot of graphic designers. You're not really thinking about
Because you have to match their branding.
logos and colors. They're doing Super Bowl ads,
Yep.
right? And you're just running your little office and you're using their marketing, their flyers, their whatever, right? I think if you find yourself recreating the wheel, it may be a sign that you might be better off on your own.
That's a really good
Because
point.
you're paying for those graphic designers. You're paying
Yep.
for that brand that's been built by State Farm. And why are you doing it twice, right? Because you're also
Yeah.
putting time and money into your own campaigns, your own branding.
Yeah. As real estate, you can have your own team look, even though you need to incorporate, the
bigger
brokerage
logo.
branding. And maybe there's some other companies out there that have the opportunity to have their own team look and logo and feel. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. If you really are starting to find yourself recreating the wheel, that might be a good sign that maybe it's time.
You're building a different brand, right?
Yep.
In our industry, I have a graphic designer on retainer. We meet once a week on a Zoom call. She's constantly doing flyers, Facebook post images, right? She's doing a recruiting packet for me, business cards. Just it's almost constant, right? And when I was in other companies, that was all created and very professional, and all you did is log in, download it, and it has your picture on it, and you send it out.
That's true. Actually, our previous brokerage did have that. They had a ton of content that, like you said, you just put your photo, your name, you're done.
Right. And if you're the kind of person that likes to get distracted
Yeah.
or likes to not prospect, and
That's a good place
you
to
want
get lost.
build flyers, you want to meet with graphic designers, maybe that's a crutch. Maybe that's, again, I think if you want to just be a salesperson, there's a lot to be said about putting your team inside of an organization that takes away all of the distractions from brass tacks sales.
Yep.
And just doing the work, right?
Exactly.
What about time management? So we talked about all the meetings. One of the challenges for me, because I own a company with time management, is all of the interruptions, all of the
Yes.
distractions. The open door policy sucks.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it's open, the policy is everybody lines up outside the door to talk.
Well, there are two quotes that I absolutely love, and I cannot remember if I've mentioned them already. I think I have. But one of them is, in fact, I'm thinking about getting these framed and putting them in our office once our office is done. But it says, be bright, be brief, be gone. So come in and share your brilliant idea, briefly leave. And another one is, if the person you're talking to during business hours isn't going to make you any money, 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that, like you were saying, the interruptions, you have such a higher quantity of people who are, you got a minute, can I run this past you type thing. So something, Shannon and I have actually talked about that might make a difference is blocking time. Like, this is your broker on demand for this piece of time.
That's nice.
But when you run a team, like how is it different for you when you had a team versus a company?
Okay, so I can picture myself sitting inside the office where I used to work, right? And there were probably 20 people milling around just like there are now. None of them came to me with questions, right? They went elsewhere with questions because I was not
The broker.
the manager, the broker, the leader of any of them. I had one assistant, and he and I would talk quite a bit, and he would come to me with questions, but they were questions about my loans and my clients, and they were more pertinent to me, right?
Right.
Now the kind of questions I get are, hey, so-and-so wants the 23rd off, but there's already 2 other processors with the 23rd off. And I think it's a bad job in like giving people more freedom and delegating on a better level, right? I think there's an ego stroke of being the guy who has to answer all the questions that I'm trying to get away from. And getting these, giving people more authority. But it's also like reasonable things like, hey, I got a file that's blowing up and I need your help. That's what you're here for, right? You're the mentor, you're the owner of the company. How about disgruntled clients? Before or after closing, we've had them show up at our office, and I've had to take an hour and talk to them for an hour, or take over a loan that's falling apart for a loan officer, and give away a lot of money and time and expertise to get it done. Those are all things that you wouldn't have if you just had your own team and you were doing your own deals. Right?
Yeah. Another thing that happens sometimes is that if the team is becoming, everybody has ebbs and flows in their business. And when business is going really well, most everybody is content. And when business starts to drop, those are almost always the ones who have problems. And when people start to have problems, they start to complain, they start to, and it can really hurt the morale. And so as a business owner, I have found that it's so much more time consuming to have to, step in and address those things when they happen. And sometimes, it's a half hour, sometimes it's a half day. Sometimes, you need to schedule it out for the next while. And the other tough thing about handling that type of size of morale issue is it's draining. It's hard to handle that, get into the correct headspace and approach so that you can be most effective with that, and then shift out of that to get back to your job. That transition time can really be detrimental to your own personal business. So if you are producing, which you and I both are, running our brokerage, our team inside the brokerage as well, it can impact that. So having the lesser burden can sometimes feel easier. But then again, it's fun to also be that person to help them see the vision and re-engage and such. There's a reward that comes from that.
I think the question that we started with is a really good one. How big do you want to be? Because I think you can still find joy in mentoring and training on a smaller scale, right? If you have a team of 3 and you're helping these 2 assistants learn the business and taking care of lots of clients, that can be fulfilling. I think my own, scale issues of like, hey, I want to do this on a bigger level. I want to teach more people. I want to be more of a mentor to more people. It's probably cost me quite a bit of money this year. I look at my production and how much I made versus how much I would have made if I didn't have all these other things going on. Right. It's like, I probably would have made more money if I would have done all this inside of an organization. The question is, would I have done all of it?
That's what I've also wondered too, is that the whole creation, the excitement, the getting everything going has, I believe, actually caused my production to massively increase. And it's interesting because last year I had this massive surge of business, and this year I'm about half. And Shannon was exactly opposite. Last year she was about half, and this year she's, twice as much. And so we're hoping to go into next year and both of us hit that same level, but higher. But there's just something about that whole creation that drives you to do more. There's excitement
that people can see in your eyes. They can hear it in your voice. I think if you've found that you've lost that, there was a point where I just felt like I wasn't even selling myself anymore. I was selling the logo on my shirt. We have in-house underwriters. We have in-house closers. You should choose me as your loan officer, right? It's like, and I just found like I didn't even have a soul anymore. I didn't have an identity. I wasn't even building my own book of business anymore. People weren't using me for me. Because I wasn't even selling me. And now we don't even have those things. And my business has grown, and I'm building a sustainable book of business because they're coming for me, not for the ancillary things I used to sell. Right. Interesting conversation. Any other thoughts about how big do you want to be, and how big do you want to be, Liz?
I want to be the biggest brokerage in the world.
Nice. You have big big goals?
I do have big goals. Like when Shannon and I first teamed up, we started building our 2 broker models. So the first one was based on new agents. The second was based on seasoned agents. And then we built the bridge between them.
Yeah.
We already could see where it could go and purchased every domain in the continental United States. So my Washington agents, my Texas agents, things like that. Knowing that we'd start out as a referral brokerage until we started opening branches in those places. So we're getting the referral side of our business, that website up and running, myusagents.com.
Wow.
So I envision, and then we just landed our first builder, which is pretty big, and created it in such a way that we could white label that to any builder who needs, by the way, any builder who needs an in-house or not in-house, opposite of that, outsourced real estate company that looks in-house and is phenomenally on point. Oh my gosh, it was so fun building out that whole thing. I felt like I was like back in that massive creation. But it is on point and really makes the builders look good and takes a lot of heat off of them, because we know that's part of our job is to take that. And so we want to real estate, builder relationships, referral based, all of that. And who knows, maybe we'll go international someday.
Wow. I don't even know how that would work.
I don't either, but other
do houses
brokerages
outside
do that.
of America? I mean, is there real estate outside of the U.S.?
I don't know. I think so. I heard of that once.
I can't even look past the borders of Utah. Like my vision ends
Utah.
at the borders of Utah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For me,
So-
I really just I have made a transition in the last few months. Our market has shifted a lot. There was just so much refinances happening that I really built this whole company up on the idea of catching the wind, right? When the wind is strong, you put up your sails and you make hay.
Yep.
And so we did that. We hired lots of people. We trained them well. We had, loan officers who were just catching, we were advertising for them. We did great. And I'm just finding now that the path forward for me is to focus on my team. And for these loan officers, that's the path forward for them too. They've got to learn to generate their own business and lead their own team. And I'm gonna really focus on me and my team. My goal is to have a team of me plus 5, and I already have me plus 4. So I need to add one
Perfect.
more. I want to generate 85 leads a month. Right now I generate about 40 to 50.
Awesome.
So I need to about double the number of leads I'm generating, and that will double the number of closings I have. And I think I could operate there for the rest of my career and be very happy.
I love that.
And if I have a few loan officers who are doing the same thing on the side, great. If not, it doesn't really affect me because I've learned it's really not where the money is anyway, right? Their production is theirs. They're going to make most of the money on those deals.
Yep.
And so, as we talk about team versus company, I think I'm very proud that I had the shift to company when I did. I think the timing was great and was able to capitalize on it. And I think now the direction for me is the opposite. It's just my team and growing my team and being more focused on loans that have my name on them and not someone else's name as the originator. Right?
Yep. And, kind of to add to that too, is one of the focuses that I really want to have as well is I'm going to also increase my personal business, probably not by double, but who knows, maybe. But I'm going to have much more focused where I am more participating from 9:30 to 11:30 because I allow brokerage and other things to bump my time a little bit. And I'm going to get much more finite on that and set the example so that the agents who come in will be able to also just come shadow me any day or work side by side, whatever, so they can see how I'm generating business and duplicate it much the way that you already do. And so as we build our company that way, the agents who come in will have that consistency.
I really think the path that I would recommend, I feel strongly that you've got to build your team and your business first. If you aren't already producing at a very high level, it's hard to then just try to do it while you're building a company at the same time. Right.
It's not impossible, but it's hard.
But if you can build up, an awesome team that can be the standard and the example before you start your company, the other thing you're going to build up is capital, clients, stability, right? And then it's not such a risk because you don't have to borrow money to start your company. You start it with cash, or even better, start it with no cash.
Right.
Grow it just as you have revenue, right?
Which is what you and I both highly recommend, if at all possible.
I've tried it both ways.
Yeah.
It's just much better
Yep.
to let the business pay for itself over time, right? Well, good. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for the conversation. I really appreciate it. And
Right back at you.
yep. Okay. Well,
right.
thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to the Business Greater Than You podcast with Nelson Bars and Liz Sears. Our mission is to help lenders and agents like you.
If you're either already a full-time realtor or looking to become one, and you desire to be highly successful, if you are both a learner and a doer, a hard worker and a total team player, we would love to chat with you about joining our team. Visit us at businessgreaterthanyou.com.
If you're a loan officer or would like to be one, we have a path to help you learn the business and develop the skills needed to lead a high-performance origination team for better income and lifestyle.
And lastly, if you would like to work with either of us, we would love your business.
Do you have a question for a future show? Would you like to be considered as a guest on our show? If so, please call or text our listener line at 801-871-9130.